Hi, this is Gary. I posted a few things about my 914 on the internet before, and actually had somebody that subscribed to my channel and told me they thought it was interesting. I have no idea why, but they wanted to see some more. So today I am tackling changing the rear axle bearings. This 914 is 41 years old. It's a 1973. And it had a heck of a whine in the back of it. Wasn't really sure whether it was, we put new tires on. I wasn't sure whether it was actually tire noise or bearing noise that I was hearing. The way to find out, to really be sure with these things, if you don't know and you got a whine, put the top on your car, put the windows up in your car so you can make the car, the cabin, as quiet as possible. Take it out on a nice smooth road, freeway, whatever, and get it up to speed. And then swerve a little bit from left to right. And normally what you'll hear what you hear is a whine, but normally as you swerve and you put a little bit of pressure on that bearing from right to left, you know, making the tires kind of bend in and out, that thing will, if it's bad, you'll hear those bearings sing. They'll be obvious. You can bring it in, and when you pull the bearing loose and, you know, get your stub axle and everything out, you can actually move it around. You'll see that the bearing is bad or not. You'll know from the noise that you hear, the grinding and stuff, that the bearing is bad. Anyway, these things are really tricky to do inside the car. Most people will tell you that you've got to take this whole trailing arm out. That can screw up your alignment. Then you've got the alignment to mess with. Typically, you should do this on a press. That is the right way to do it. I'm a little bit redneck. I searched on some of the sites like 914 World and asked for advice. Found some good advice from some people. Obviously, the books that you buy are kind of worthless. They leave a lot to be desired. Take this off, take that off, but they don't tell you how to take it off. So, here's the issue on the driver's side of the car. You're going to have to take the constant velocity joint out. You're going to have to take that axle out. This is a good time to actually reseal your bearings or re-grease your bearings if you haven't done that for a while. But you're going to find on the passenger side it's really not a big deal. It's not that hard. You can kind of pull the screws loose. If you get the bolts loose from the inside, a lot of times you can jerk hard on the axle and maybe break that constant velocity joint loose. If you can't, there's a little bit of a machine line around the outside of that joint. Take a nice big cold chisel, get underneath, get a ball peen hammer and a cold chisel, and give it a good smack. Put that chisel in that groove and give it a smack outward to try to pull the bearing away from the transmission. And then turn it 90 degrees, smack it again, 90 degrees, smack it again. As you work your way around, you'll generally loosen up that constant velocity joint. But inside the hub over here, inside where the rear bearing is, that's a whole other story. And getting that axle out of here is going to be difficult. From what I've read, people tell you have to take the starter off to get the room to pull that axle out. You're never going to reach inside here and pull that CV joint loose. So you can try pulling on the axle, as hard as you could, jamming it, and seeing if you can break it loose. But with those drift pins that hold the bearing, the constant velocity joint in line with the bolt holes and with those drift pins in there, they're not drift pins, I can't remember what they're actually called, roll pins. Anyway, with those in there, it makes it really hard to get that axle out. So here's what I found. First of all, take your brake drum off, bust your nut loose on the outside here, and leave the stub axle actually attached to the axle. Take your calipers loose. Some people take the calipers completely loose and hang them. What I've found is that you can pull the spring clip here that holds the brake line. Where am I? Right there. You can pull the spring clip loose. You can pull the caliper loose. You can kind of jimmy it forward carefully, enough usually to kind of angle your rotor and pull the rotor out. Once you've got the rotor out, put your, some people hang these. I actually put it back and put one of the bolts that hold it back in place, and it'll stay there. It's out of the way, and it's fine. Then the trick to getting this axle out is getting the clearance. And you can see that it only bends so far, and you're going to hit the side of the transmission. Now what I've found is once you've got the car up in the air and you're supported with jack stands, if you take a jack underneath your trailing arm, you can lift that trailing arm up. And you see the angle that we have. Let me see if you can see. If you can see the angle of the axle, you know, it's only going to go so far because it's in that constant velocity joint. It doesn't allow it to bend, you know, just like 90 degrees or anything. It's going to bend so far and it's going to lock. But if you jack your axle up, jack your trailing arm up, then that kind of relieves the angle of the constant velocity drive, and you can get it up and over the transmission. And then you can go more straight. Now you're behind the starter, and you can actually pull your axle out. And as if you see, I don't know if you can see in here. Let me see. Yeah, you can see where I've pulled the stub axle all the way out. Now, as I finish this off and I pull the hub and everything, I'll go ahead and pull that the rest of the way out. But at least then I can get my axle out, I believe, without removing the CV joint. I can also, if I have any more problems, I can always get my my cold punch, and as you can see the little groove here, I can always take that and I can, you know, hit this way towards the outside, and I can pull that stub axle off of there. Then it's easy to slip the whole thing back in when I'm done, because it'll be in, you know, in two separate pieces. So that's some of the tricks that I'm learning. Most of the experience comes from being an old VW mechanic many years ago. So that's some of the things that I'm learning. I know these pictures suck, but I'm trying to do this with one hand holding a smartphone and one hand pointing things out to you. So as we go, I'll try to add some more to this, and maybe this will help the next guy who wants to DIY, do it yourself. The next guy that wants to change his axle bearings, his rear axle bearings, maybe it'll help him do it a little bit easier. Okay, that's it for today. So, we were talking a couple of minutes ago about taking the rear CV joint out. Now you see I've still got the stub, the drive hub, I guess that's what you want to call it. We've still got that on there, okay? The trick what we did, like I said, jacked the trailing arm up. It gave us a little bit more room. Also, took the shock absorber off. If you've got a jack under here, then you can drop that trailing arm down to where it just hangs. That gives you enough room to remove that stub axle. So, making it a lot easier to get that stub axle out of the car to service it. Okay, next thing we're going to do is see if we can get an axle puller and drive that hub out of there. So, continuing on, you can see that now that I have the hub out, okay? As I told you, okay, I'll admit I'm a little bit redneck. So if you like some of the stunts that I pulled so far, you're really going to love this one. Didn't have the tools. I wanted to borrow a slide hammer from the local parts store, but I thought, what the heck, I got some stuff around here. So here we got a carriage bolt. We've got a socket, 1 1/16 socket. Inside the carriage bolt, a little bit of rubber hose on there. You can see here's the hub. We've got a big long bolt, a couple of good sized washers, and believe it or not, I have a business where I rebuild speakers, woofers, tweeters, whatever. This is a magnet off of a big old, like an 18-inch speaker. Made a perfect slide hammer weight. Okay, redneck, but the hub is out. Okay, here's your next installment of Mickey Mouse Tools 101. A bolt, common ordinary bolt, a nut. Of course, you see this nut is flanged on the outer edge, and it's on there backwards. That gives me a little bit better driving edge where I'm not taking a chance of pushing anything sharp into the races here. From the back side, find the edge, put your bolt against it, your nut against it, smack it with a hammer, work your way back and forth. 90 degrees, 180 degrees, all the way around, nice and slow. And you see, here is our outer hub and no bearing. So all out in one piece. Clean that up. The next one's ready to go in and put her back together.